Still working with the Create Fill Object tool, we're going to set the nodes for shading around the lion's body. Double-click on the medium brown color, and you can see we're starting again with the top knot, and you will simply create Fill Object tool and set nodes around the top knot. Don't cover the whole area, just part of it, and that's just about 2/3 or 1/3, 1/2 of the way down. Right-click Parameters, and you are going to set your parameters for this object. Your pull compensation is 0.2. Your density, you can go anywhere from 7 to 9 millimeters. The angle for this one was -75. There is no underlay, and I have changed my maximum random broadening for side 1 to 1.1, side 2 to 2.0. Remember, you can change these to whatever broadening you want for each object. Each object does not have to have the same broadening. And then you want to hold parameters for new objects and click on OK. From now on, you will just digitize your shading objects and change the angle. This is the shading object for this section of the ear. Notice how I've broken the ear up into 2 sections, otherwise I couldn't get a good angle. This one was -143. Now I've got to show that one, and right-click Parameters, and you can see this one was 95 degrees. So even though the ear was one object, the shading could be 2 or 3 objects. You could even break up your shading there and make it 3 objects. Now when we got down to the area on the inside of the ear, that's just a simple manual punch. Start right here at the top edge, and then just come down and up, down and up. If you place your node at the top, way out here, you can always move your node back in to get them nice and close together. Don't be too close with the nodes, as this is just a light shading. Now when you get to that point, you want to make sure that you are adding connections. What I have done on each one is set my end node as close as possible or right on top of my first node so that I don't need any connections. Transform, create connection, and as you can see, because I started this node at the correct position where this node ended, I didn't need a connection. Now we'll start this one, and you can see that my starting point and end point are way down there. Angle was 144, and that finished that area. Now we have the area on the other side. I have an angle of 39 degrees for this. There is my end point. There is my start point, which allowed me to have a very small connection stitch right across the bottom of the lion's chin. So now we're back to the ear, and again it's just another little manual punch object on the inside of the ear. Notice how I started right there at the end point of the area below it, and the ear shading is 2 objects right there. Let's take a look at them. No, I'm sorry, the ear shading was just the one object. This one is not ear shading, it's the hand shading. Because that was on such a simple little angle, I could get away with just one object for the shading. And the angle was set to -16 degrees. All the parameters are the same, as you can see. Fill 5. And no underlay. And in this one, maximum random broadening was 1 and 0.9. So they do change. And you didn't really need to see that message, did you? Okay. Now we're going to go down to the hand. And that's the shading for the hand and the arm. Remember that there is going to be shading along the bottom too. So that's just a small section. Start point, end point right there. There's the shading down the body. And again, you can see it's in 2 sections, so I can set different angles. The angle for this section, 50 degrees. Start point, end point, again avoiding connection stitches. Start point, end point, again to avoid connection stitches, 123 degrees. Now we still have quite a bit of shading to go through. There was more shading pieces than there were body pieces. Now we have this section. 37 degrees was the angle on this one, and I had a connection stitch down to the top point. Notice where my end point is, right there. So again, I don't have a connection stitch. And this one goes right down and around the paw right to there. Start point, end point, angle 47. The other side of the paw, start point, end point, angle 178. That's so you have nice realistic angles on your shading. Next one, that my start and end point are at the same position, and I have an angle of 55 degrees. And this was the last large shading area, and my start point was here, so I could have a short connection stitch. End point was there. Transform, create connection, and there is my connection stitch. I can simply just bring this node over here, insert, and make sure it runs right along the edge so it's well hidden. Just like that, and no one will know you have that connection stitch there. And the last thing to do is your manual punch around the outside edge. Again, start at the very end point of the previous object, which is right there, and then just do a very narrow manual punch. Notice how some punches are longer than others, and some are shorter, some are wider, and some are narrower. That gives it the contrast that you want. So if I generate stitches, you can now see what this shading will look like. And it is very effective. A bit of work, but very effective. Once you start, you would be surprised how quickly it goes. So what you have at this point is you have all the body sections done with the shading on top of them. It doesn't look too wonderful right now, mostly because of the colors. The colors are limited in Studio, but once you set the proper colors in Editor, it will look awesome. And of course, we need the details.